Sony just fixed a huge PlayStation problem. There's a big sale going on in the PlayStation Store right now. Death Stranding's Director's Cut is finally here and we've got all the changes. And the more we hear about Far Cry 6, the more disappointing it feels. Sony's been pretty good ever since the PS5 came out about having a new sale go up on the store pretty much every month. And they change the names and the themes, but it seems like a lot of the same games are going on sale. And the current sale that's going on right now seems to be mostly Japanese themed games. So I went through the big list of every game that's on sale and picked out a few of my favorites that you might want to consider picking up. So Square Enix finally learned all the tricks that people were using to get a discount on the next gen version of Final Fantasy VII Remake. So now if you want to get the PS4 version, it's $30 and then you get the free upgrade minus the Intergrade DLC, but they've also got the Intergrade version, which is the next gen version with the DLC, on sale for $50. So like if you bought the PS4 one and did the free upgrade and bought the DLC, you'd be paying $50, or you could just buy the next gen version for $50. But if you're still on PS4, I think you should still just go with the PS4 version so that you have it, and then when you get a PS5 you can just upgrade for free. There's a whole bunch of other Final Fantasy VII games on sale that I will never touch in my life because I am not a weeb, so come at me in the comments for that one. Square Enix's quietly awesome series Nier is on sale right now. You can get the newly released Nier Replicant for $39, which is a steal, and you can get Nier Automata for $20. And I know I just railed on you guys for liking weeb games, but Nier Automata is one of my favorite weeb games of all time, so I'm kind of a hypocrite. I actually really enjoy that game because it has awesome combat. The story actually does get pretty cool if you can get past the sort of weird character design. Like, I know a lot of people like 2B, but when I played the game for the first time as someone who doesn't play a lot of Japanese games, it was a little like, okay, what kind of game is this? And then as the story goes on, I was like, oh, it actually like kind of plays into the story, so I thought that was cool. If by some chance you still don't have Persona 5 Royal, that is on sale for $24. Now the original version of Persona 5 is in the PlayStation Plus collection, so if you're really cheap and you have a PS5, you can just go play that. But Royal actually added a ton of stuff and rebalanced a lot of the game to make it more streamlined, so if you're going to play Persona 5 for the first time, I would just drop the $24 and play Persona 5 Royal. And thankfully, because this is a Japanese publisher sale, we get to talk about my favorite series in the world, Resident Evil. Resident Evil 2 Remake is on sale. It's deluxe edition for $20, which is not the cheapest I've ever seen it. I think it usually goes on sale for $16, but if you stupidly ignored me the last 15 times I recommended it, now you get punished for it by paying $4 more, and you better buy it this time because who knows? Next time it could go on sale for $25 and it could slowly increase over time back until it's $60, and you'll be like, man, I wish I listened to Jimmy when he told me to buy this at $16 and then again at $20. I've been watching a ton of the original Dragon Ball anime on Funimation when I'm at the gym because it's really motivating, so I just noticed that Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is on sale for $18. It says here on my phone. That game, I don't know if it's any good. I never played it, but it basically, from what I've heard, goes through the entire Dragon Ball Z TV show, so if you wanted to play the show instead of watching it, maybe that one might be worth checking out. I would check out some reviews first because, again, did not play it, do not know how it reviewed. That could be a totally bunk recommendation there. I'm sorry, guys. But yeah, while this sale might have a ton of games that I'm not personally interested in, I do talk about pretty much every sale that comes up on the PlayStation Store, so if you want to know when good games are cheap, make sure you're subscribed and have your notifications set to all. So by the time you're seeing this video, The Last of Us Day is Sunday, and they've got some cool stuff going up on the PlayStation Store. There's a flannel, there's a rain jacket that looks like the one Ellie's wearing throughout The Last of Us Part 2. They have that guitar back that I'm sure everyone is just dying to buy because I'm pretty sure it's very expensive. But on top of that, they've also been teasing some announcements, which obviously to me means this long rumored factions mode for The Last of Us Part 2. I am so excited for this. I hope it's real because there have been some other leaks from it that it might have bots in it. It might be a full price $70 game with its own story and a like full open world multiplayer type deal. I honestly have no idea what this could be, but as long as we get that core factions mode we had in The Last of Us Part 1 in some way, I am dropping full price on this game. I am so excited because that was one of my favorite multiplayer modes of all time. And when you look at competitive shooters, that's honestly one of the first ones I ever really got hardcore into just so I could work towards the platinum in The Last of Us. It was really cool because the weapons you had were all handmade. There was some variance in which way they shot. So if someone was like goated, they would have the game kind of working against them because even if you were aiming at someone's head, there was always a risk that the bullet would go out of the circle and then the other person would have a chance to kill you. And for someone like me who isn't amazing at competitive multiplayer games, that little bit of edge was all I needed because I was actually pretty good by the end of it at The Last of Us multiplayer.
Sorry to interrupt. We are having some technical difficulties at PSReady. My name's Nicole. I'm from Super Switch Go, and I'm giving away a free Nintendo Switch OLED. Be sure to check it out after this video. I'm gonna figure out how to get you back to gymming.
Another thing we could see at this Last of Us Day announcement thing that they're doing is maybe the trailer for the TV show. We know that they're deep in filming on that. Honestly, they might be done filming. I gotta be real with you guys, I was a lot more excited for that show when I thought it was going to be a companion to The Last of Us. Like, there's so much time between Joel at the beginning of the game and Joel when it picks up where he meets Ellie that I feel like they could have explored with the show, that I'm like, why are you just remaking the story of The Last of Us Part 1 with TV actors? Like, the game, I think, is good enough to stand on its own, and if they made a story that was really good in between the intro to the game and where it picks up after the intro, that could have got people who normally wouldn't play video games excited to go back and play The Last of Us. We also know they're working on a remake of The Last of Us Part 1. They might show a trailer for that. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff going on in the Last of Us universe besides The Last of Us Part 2, which I know will make a lot of you pretty happy because no one likes The Last of Us Part 2 apparently. I see the comments whenever I say I like it. So yeah, people are going to be excited for the show, they're going to be excited for the remake, and hopefully the multiplayer mode for Part 2 that does not involve Abby in any way. So we got the first game with death in the title out of the way for September, and that means it's finally time to play Death Stranding Director's Cut, which just dropped on the PS5. Now I actually wasn't sure, even though I watched these trailers that were 9 minutes long, exactly what changed in it, so I figured I'd run down for you guys and tell you what's actually different so you can decide if it's worth paying the $10 to upgrade from the PS4 version. So the first option is a native 4K running at around 60 frames per second, and then you've got a checkerboard 4K which runs closer to 60 frames per second. Neither of these modes say that they lock at 60 frames per second, but if you're one of those people who really wants it to run at 60, I would just go for the performance mode, because checkerboard 4K to my eye looks about as close as you can get to full true native 4K, and if you're dropping to like 40 frames per second in every boss fight just to get that full true 4K, I don't think it's going to be worth it, because when you do get to have combat in this game, it's actually really fun and it can get pretty hairy, so you're going to want to make sure the frame rate is up. The second big change is kind of disappointing to me because it provided some of the best memes in the game, but Monster Energy is no longer in Sam's like rest room. So between missions, when you stop at different points across the United States, because that's what this game is, you walk from one end of the United States to the other multiple times, they used to have Monster Energy that he could crack open and drink, and it was like a full cutscene, and the cans of Monster they made for this game were so detailed that they honestly looked photorealistic. And I guess like the whole thing there was that Kojima needed some extra money to put some final touches on it, so Monster came in and gave him that extra money, but they didn't want to continue that license or sponsorship for the PS5 version of this game. I don't know. Long story short here is that Monster Energy is no longer in Death Stranding. Of course, because this is a native PS5 game now, you're getting DualSense support, and this is actually a game where I feel like it would make a difference. So there's a bunch of different terrain in this game. You're walking across rivers, you're walking across stony like mountain paths, you're walking across snow, and all of those different terrains translate to different vibrations from the controller. So it'll feel like you're actually trudging through snow when you're in the more mountainous regions of the game, and when you're walking through a river, it'll feel like Sam stepping in a river. It just adds more immersion, which is the whole point of the DualSense controller. You're also going to get more resistance from the triggers based on how much stuff he's carrying on his back and how heavy it is, which I think is pretty cool. Like, it's all the ways you would expect the DualSense to be used with this game, which I know doesn't always happen, right? They always come up with some weird way that you weren't expecting, but this one is like, oh, it's a game where you're walking across the United States. This is how I'd expect it to feel on my DualSense, and they were like, I got you. I read your mind. That's exactly how it's gonna feel. Another super welcome change is the fleshed out combat. You've got the Mazer gun, which can tase the mules, who are just guys who run up and steal your Amazon packages. They're super annoying. So now you've got a way to combat them. You've also got like boxing gloves to beat the out of them, which I think is hilarious. They also added in an exoskeleton that basically combines all of the other different exoskeletons together and makes all of their properties a little bit worse, but I'm telling you right now, when I play this game, that's the one I'm sticking with for the rest of the game. You've also got a shooting range for all the new guns. You can replay boss battles with all those new guns. You can go do this like underground facility that's like an old world package distribution center. I don't want to spoil what's in that, but I heard it's pretty cool. The changes that they made are well worth $10, and I feel like it justifies the fact that they're hiding the new graphics options behind that $10 a lot more than the $30 update on Ghost of Tsushima did. You know, when you talk about certain games or movies, you're like, I love to hate that franchise. Well, for me, Far Cry is the franchise that I hate to love. When it started out with Far Cry 3, you know, I know there were 2 Far Cry games before that, but it really came into its own with Far Cry 3. That was the first one I played. I absolutely loved it. I remember distinctly walking into GameStop and seeing on the poster Skyrim with guns, and nothing sounded cooler to me when I was just starting out college than Skyrim with guns. I bought that game right away for a full $60. I brought it home, I popped it in, and you know what it felt like? Skyrim with guns. I 100%ed that game. I got the platinum. I did all the crappy multiplayer trophies. It was so awesome. Far Cry 4 was cool. It just felt like an expansion that had a lot of missions for Far Cry 3. And then Far Cry 5, I got it early. I played it like a whole weekend straight. I beat it and I was so disappointed. That game has possibly one of the worst endings of any game I've ever played. So I've kind of just soured a little bit on the Far Cry series as a whole. But when I saw they were bringing in Giancarlo Esposito, they were kind of going back to the Far Cry 3 roots for Far Cry 6, I got tentatively excited for it. Then the previews came out and I was like, oh, this actually sounds like an improvement over Far Cry 5. And now we're hearing about the graphics options on console and I'm right back down to skeptical mode. So basically wherever you play Far Cry 6, unless it's a PC, you're not going to be able to use ray tracing, which is super disappointing because this is like one of the first next-gen showcase games. It's a big game coming out this fall and they've already delayed it multiple times. So I feel like if they could delay it just a few more months to figure out how to get ray tracing in there, that would go a long way. It is a shooter. I want that to run at 60 frames per second, but at least give me the choice of playing with ray tracing at 30. Now, if they can't get it to run at 30 with ray tracing, that does not say a lot of good things about this game, because if you look at trailers and gameplay for Far Cry 6, it looks a lot like Far Cry 5 with better lighting, which, like, with better lighting, without ray tracing, that's not good. Now, I will point out that a lot of the articles I read said that only the PC version is going to have AMD's Fidelity FX super sampling, and that is a PC only feature in general. Like, there's no games on Xbox or PS5 that have Fidelity FX super sampling because that's a PC graphics card thing, but it also sucks. It doesn't work very well, and when you have the option to use DLSS on NVIDIA's side or super sampling from AMD, I always go with DLSS because the AMD super sampling just frankly looks like. But yeah, because there's not that many games I actually want to play coming out this fall after like Alan Wake and Back 4 Blood, Far Cry 6 is actually kind of at the top of the list, and it's one of those games that'll come out and go on sale very quickly either for Black Friday or Christmas, so I might wait for it, and when I have some time off around both of those holidays, I'll just blow through it and relax, because there's nothing better than when you're on vacation and you can prop up your iPad, put on a movie or something like that, put on some Christmas music maybe, and just blast through an open world game that you don't have to think too hard about. Those are like my greatest memories growing up, and I'm really excited to do that with Far Cry 6. The PS5 and Xbox Series X are back in the mainstream news because some retailers, despite saying that they weren't going to have them in stores, lied and actually are selling them in stores. And by some retailers, I mean Best Buy. It's just Best Buy. You can line up just like you did back when the Xbox 360 launched or when the PS4 launched and buy your brand new console after waiting all night. You can go home bleary-eyed, pop in Demon Souls, and have a hell of a time playing it. And you'll probably have some sweet night terrors later. You'll have a sleep paralysis demon that looks like the first boss in Dark Souls, which is an experience I know everyone wants. Now, the local news stations obviously went to these Best Buys to start talking to people who were waiting in line, and it was honestly pretty wholesome. Like, I went into it trying to make some jokes about it, but there was a lady who said, this is the only thing I've wanted to get my son since it came out. He really wants a PlayStation 5, so she was camping out waiting to buy her son a PS5, and I'm just like, I'm into that. I think that's cool. It's a cool mom. If my mom did that for me when I was a kid, I would think she's the coolest mom ever, and it would be something that when I was like 28 like I am now, I would remember and be like, man, it was so cool my mom camped out outside Best Buy to buy me a PS5. My advice to that kid, if his mom actually got it, is to keep your grades up, because she'll probably take that away if you screw up in school. That's probably going to be the first thing she goes for. Real talk though, it's just nice to see that these things are actually showing up in stores, because the whole reason they weren't showing up is because it couldn't be predicted how many would come in at any given time. So if Best Buy is starting to sell them in stores, that means that they're able to like predict how many consoles they're going to be able to buy when they want to stock consoles, which is good, because that means Sony is doing better at actually making PS5s and getting them over here to America so that people can buy them that aren't scalpers. You know, things are finally, hopefully, starting to get back to normal, and the timing could not be better because we've got the holiday season coming up. So if you're super worried because this is going to be the second year where you disappoint your son or your nephew or your best friend or your girlfriend, I don't know who in your life you're buying a PS5 for, I feel like you could cross your fingers and possibly have a better chance of getting one than you did last November. But yeah, speaking of PS5s becoming more available, there's this weird story that's going around about scalpers regretting scalping PS5s because the prices that these things are going for has plummeted. Now, when you read into the actual article, they're making a lot of stretches here over at CBR.com, which I think is Comic Book Resource. So basically, they make the argument that at their peak, the PS5 was selling for like $1,000, and now it has absolutely plummeted to just $700 for the disc-based version, which, like, if you're paying $500 for these things and you're getting more than one with a bot, that $200 profit gets stacked quite a bit, and I'm sure people are just fine selling their new consoles that they're buying 15 of for $700 versus $1,000. Like, yeah, you're losing $300 per console, but you're still making $200 off the top. I feel like it's doing just fine on the scalper side of things. The funniest thing about this, though, is that a lot of scalpers are trying to combat this drop in price by using that video that Austin and I made where we got the new PS5 that has the smaller heatsink, and they're actually differentiating the model number of their digital PS5s now. They're saying, yep, I've got the old one with the bigger heatsink that runs 5 degrees cooler, and I'm gonna sell it for more than $700, which, guys, said this in both videos, I've said this on podcasts, the changes were not big enough where you should go look for this old version. I think whatever PS5 you get is just fine. So if you are going to buy from a scalper just to save yourself the headache of trying to use a bot or anything like that, don't worry about going for the older version and paying more for it. Whatever version you get is gonna be totally fine. So back at the beginning of the summer, there was this huge issue that popped up with both the PS3 and PS4 related to their CMOS batteries. So basically what happens is there's a watch-sized battery inside your PS3 or PS4, and if that battery dies, it would lock you out from playing pretty much any digital game. And the reason for that is that there's an internal clock in the PS3 and PS4 that has to be synced up with the internet, and if the battery died or servers ever went down and that clock wasn't able to sync itself and make sure it was set to the right time, it would just lock you out from playing all your games. Now, I know we just talked about the 9.0 upgrade for the PS4 and how it was actually pricking a lot of people's consoles, but Sony has apparently patched that up, and now you're safe to download the 9.0 update if you have a PS4. And one of the things that came along with it is the fix for this CMOS battery issue. So Modern Vintage Gamer actually tested it in a video where he disconnected his PS4 from the internet and removed the CMOS battery, and he was still able to play his games on his PS4. Now, I know a lot of people at the time were like, oh, people just want to crap on Sony, this is just criticizing them to criticize them because they're big right now, but that's actually a big issue for one reason. Sony is terrible at backwards compatibility. We are seeing it right now with the PS3, specifically with the PS5. You can only play PS4 games and PS5 games on the PS5. So theoretically, we have no reason to assume that as time goes on, they'll continue supporting even the PS4. Like when the PS6 eventually comes out, I bet you it won't support PS4, just PS5. Because if Sony has this ticking time built into the PS3 or PS4, that could really spell the end for a whole generation of games, and that's really scary to think about. Like honestly, I know when you look at 3D games, as they get older, it's harder and harder to go back, but I was thinking about it last week when we talked about the new Infamous game that might happen, how bad I want to go back and play Infamous 2. And then I was like, oh, it's on PlayStation Now, and then I thought back to that video I did about PlayStation Now where I tested it on really good internet and tried playing Infamous 2, and it was borderline unplayable. So yeah, I would really like it if Sony kept fixing these issues when they came up, so I feel like we got to keep praising them when they do it, because then they'll keep doing it. Anyway guys, that's all the PlayStation news I have for you today, so make sure you let me know what you think of all of it down in the comments below, and remember to subscribe and set your notifications to all if you haven't already. As always guys, my name is Jimmy Champagne, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.